All right, y'all. Welcome to RSG Live at the Lounge. We have another edition here, and I thank you all for being part of this series with us. And we have another special guest here with us. His name is Scottie RODGERS. He is the Associate Commissioner in the Sun Belt Conference on Strategic Communication. And we want to always provide a different perspective. And so, Scottie, we want to welcome you to the lounge. How are you doing today? How are you and yours doing, first of all, as we are all trying to navigate these historic times?
Well, thank you for having me in the lounge. It's a pleasure to be here. You know, living in New Orleans, as everybody knows, here and in the state of Louisiana, it's been a bit of a challenge as it relates to the COVID-19. This has obviously been one of the hot spots in the country. So it's been challenging in the sense of just trying to make sure that you're following all the protocols and all of the social distancing and making sure that you are staying at home as much as possible and staying away from people. You know, I'm a social person, so that's a bit of a challenge, but you know, it is something that we have to do. And you know, we've been home now for a little over 2 months away from the office, but you know what, just like anything in life, you learn to adjust. You know, you learn to figure out, I'm sitting here in my home office and, you know, I've moved some stuff around and got stuff and, you know, this has become the office, you know, the rest of my place is over there and this is the office. When I come in here and sit in this chair and look at this screen, this is the office. So you kind of have to create those separations, but also find a way to get out. But I was born and raised in Alabama, my family in Alabama and some other parts thereabout, they're doing fine. And, you know, I appreciate you asking. And it's just, you know, you try to stay in touch with not only your family, but your friends and colleagues in the business. And this is one of the first times we've had to talk.
Yes.
And it's great because we know a lot of the same people.
Yes. Well, you know, one of the things I think has really been important, you know, I've always shared with folks is my journey in creating RSG and where it started and kind of went off on a path still in higher education, but then kind of coming back. And we all have a story and a journey. And, you know, I know we're going to hear about the tide because I hear about that from all the folks we know together. And
Yeah.
I know that your time in Alabama, but like, you know, it's not often that we see level of diversity in certain aspects of athletic administration. And you're in strategic communication. So can you just talk about what was your journey to get to that seat? Because a lot of times I have listeners who, and some of even my own students who have an interest in coming into this space, and they're often not sure about just what happens along the journey. And so I love to be able to hear people's stories, to give examples. So where did it all start from? Like, what was your journey to get to?
No, I'll try to give the shortest version that I can, but yeah. It honestly all started my senior year of high school when, you know, I'm going to tell you something that I don't tell a lot of people is that I wanted an easy class. You know, yes. I was a pretty good student in high school, finished top 10 in my class. And I wanted an easy class. So I went to my high school as a Scandie County High School in Atmore, Alabama. And our student paper is called the SCOTTIE. And I had a good friend of mine, probably my best friend in high school. He was the editor, and he talked to the advisor, the counselor who was overseeing, and got me on the staff for my senior year. You know, I'd never wrote journalism per se. I obviously wrote in class, stuff like that. So after the first 6 weeks, I can't even remember what happened, but something happened, and I got named co-sports editor with a guy who was a year behind me, and we ended up going on a run that year, and we ended up winning best paper in the state in our division. We ended up going to Tuscaloosa for the newspaper writers or editors conference. We ended up winning best paper in the state. That my friend that was the editor, he was writing for my hometown paper, the Atmore Advance, small paper. It came out every Wednesday, every Sunday, had one page for sports. He also played baseball. So when the spring came around, he was going to play baseball for his senior year. My baseball career had ended a couple years early because I just wasn't that good. So I got asked to start writing at the paper. So I started writing at the paper. So at 18 years old, I'm the sports writer for the one paper. We now have two in town. And that after that, with combination of that and the experience I had on my student paper in high school, I decided I was going to Alabama, and I applied for this workshop. It was called the Minority Journalism Workshop. I think it's Multicultural Journalism Workshop now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically journalism camp. So
Mm-hmm.
after my senior year, prior to my freshman year at Alabama, so I go up to Alabama for 2 weeks for this journalism camp, and without going into the longer story, somehow I don't know, I won best story and best layout.
Wow.
I wrote a story about how integration in sports in the city of Selma helped with integration, meaning sports was a place where integration happened probably not necessarily first, but it was easier because people wanted to be on the team with people who were good athletes and could have a good team concept. So I wrote this story. I get this award, and then I go back, 2-3 weeks later for my freshman orientation, and I got to declare what my major is. I was actually going to major in I was going to major in math and minor in computer science. But when I got there, because of the experience I'd had previously, a few weeks earlier, I decided to major in journalism. And my freshman year, I wrote for the Crimson White, which was a student paper, my first semester there. My second semester, I didn't write at all because I pledged to fraternity. I'm Kappa Alpha Psi, so I didn't do that. But my freshman year, I went home during the holidays, wrote for my hometown paper. Went back in the summer and wrote for my hometown paper. Well, that summer, I was actually interviewing our football coach, high school football coach in my hometown for a story. They said somebody from Alabama called me from the athletic department. Well, my journalism advisor, Marie Parsons, had given my name to someone in the athletic department because they were student assistants in the media relations department for the coming fall. I ended up going up over the summer, doing an interview, came back. Well, that fall was the fall of 1992. And if you know anything about college football and college sports, fall of 1992, Alabama went on what was, still one of the most historic runs in college football because they went undefeated. It was the first year of the football championship game in Florida. Go to here in New Orleans, and this is where the story kind of comes around for me. They play Miami. Everybody knows the game in the national championship. Gino Torretta, shut them down. Alabama only throws for 20 yards in the game. Well, as a student, I got to work that game, and I was on the field for the last 8 minutes. I remember, that was January 1st, 1993. I will never forget. I'm standing on the field at the Superdome, and I look up at the Jumbotron, and I see a picture of myself just because the way the camera's going. I was like, I literally thought at that moment, I don't really know what working in sports is all about. I think I'm gonna like this. So, that just kind of, that was, basically the end of my first semester. Going into my second semester, I ended up being a student assistant for 3 years as an undergrad. Got to do women's soccer as they brought back women's soccer as a varsity sport the fall of '94. I was their first media relations contact, and I was a senior in college. And I had to travel with the team every game, and went to go to the conference championship, and just from that, I went into that. Kind of helped me in my senior year. I got into the spring of my senior year, and I started realizing, hey, I think this is what I want to do. And I ended up working a regional in Birmingham. The SEC was the host, and I had met some people at the SEC because I worked tennis championships and track championships and basketball championships. Because that's what you do as a student. You go and help out. And I learned that they had an internship program in their media relations, and I applied for it, and by the grace of God, somehow I got it. And so I started there right after college, and that was my first job out of college.
Wow. And if you were giving, folks who are, want to get into journalism, broadcast journalism, some guiding, some things, some nuggets to think about what have been kind of your guiding principles? What are some of the things that you've held true to as you worked your way through this business?
You know, the thing that really got me, I think, exposed was I had an opportunity to help out at some events. You know, with the SEC in particular. You know, I was able to work football championship game and a tennis tournament and outdoor track championship and whatever, whether we were hosting in Alabama, whether it was an opportunity to go to Birmingham or even Atlanta, you know, those types of things. Just getting the opportunity to work events and meet people and be around people. I think a lot of people want to work in sports and they just want to just show up. They just want to just think that they can just show up to an event, but you gotta give a little sacrifice, give a little time. You gotta volunteer your time. You know, whether it's a big time event like an NCAA tournament, whether it's a youth event or a little league event or something that's in your town or something that's close by, or even just taking a stab in the dark and volunteering with some of these events. You know, now with all of these big NCAA events, whether, you know, like if you guys at Wisconsin are hosting something, you know, you put out something about volunteers and, you know, they'll take people from everywhere. And sometimes that means you got to spend your own money and, you know, scrape and scrap and get with some people and forward to a room and, you know, and just kind of figure it out. But that's what I think is the number one thing you got to do when you're trying to get in and you don't really have that avenue. Volunteer for some events, get to know some people, reach out to people that are in the business. You know, don't necessarily reach out to them to get some, say, call them on the phone or send them an email, say, hey, can I have a 15-minute informational interview with you or to learn about your story? You know, we all have not used Zoom nearly as probably as much as we are doing now, but this is a great opportunity. This is a great platform where you can reach out to somebody and say, hey, can I get you on Zoom, on the phone for 15, 20 minutes? And we chat about your career and things you can do. I think that's really where it really kind of starts and can really be a catalyst to get you going if that's what you're trying to do.
Thank you, thank you. You listen to RSG Live at the Lounge. I'm here with Scottie RODGERS, who's the Associate Commissioner for Strategic Communication for the Sun Belt Conference, and you know we're just happy here to have you here. So you work with Keith Gill, who's the Commissioner of the Sun Belt Conference, who I believe is the first African American Commissioner at a football subdivision conference, and which is a whole nother opportunity. I think a lot of people talk about. I think they kind of understand, you know, what ADs do, and they understand the localization of athletics. But then you have these commissioners, and you have these conferences, and that's a whole nother space to work in. For folks who are not familiar with what the role of what the conference and the commissioner's office does, can you give them a little bit of insight before we get into, you know, how y'all responded to this most recent pandemic?
Well, you know, for me, I have a unique perspective because my job at the Sun Belt is my third job at a conference office. I worked at the SCOTTIE, as I mentioned. I spent 8 years at the Ivy League office, which is based on Princeton's campus. And I'm now finishing my third academic year here at the Sun Belt Conference. So, you know, 16 years of my 25-ish years have been at a conference office. So I've been looking at things from this lens and this perspective for a long time. And when you're at the conference office, it's all about building that unity and camaraderie within your conference structure. You know, a lot of that is already there, but how can you continue to showcase to your membership that carrying the conference banner helps you carry your own message out there beyond your circle of your alums and your alumni. It gets you out on a regional base or even on a national basis. So I think it's important when you're building your brand. You know, look at I'll use the SEC as an example. You know,
great example.
Yeah. It's a great example. I mean, when I worked there, it's evolved so much more since I've been there. But that whole SEC chant that you hear about and see about, no other conference in the country has it. And everybody's honestly trying to strive towards that. But that took a long time. You know, I remember when, you know, Arkansas and South Carolina was added to that conference. Actually, it happened on my birthday in 1990. You know, so and while I was still in high school. So, you know, it's you know, the things that they've done and the evolution. Obviously, the success of their programs has been a lot, but they've also done a lot of things within their footprint to do things. They've done a lot of stuff on the academic side with some of the programs and initiatives that they've done. and a lot of conferences have done that too. And I think everybody is looking to find that right set of initiatives and perspectives and themes that you can get behind and build behind, so that you can build that unity. Because you know the whole is always bigger than the part. And I think when you got a strong conference brand behind your university and your athletics program, it can really help bolster what that athletics program is in their region and frankly in their country and internationally.
Well, it's interesting because I think, you know, you're talking about your experience in the SCE, um, uh, the SEC, and in the Ivy Leagues, and then in Sun Belt. I mean, those are from a operational and mission standpoint, there's some differences, you know, and so let's talk a little about the Ivy League, because I didn't want to think about going there, but, you know, that's a different organizational structure, the way in which the framing of the student athlete experience is occurring. How different was your Ivy League experience in terms of what drives it versus your SEC and your Sun Belt experience? Because the Ivy League, I have a couple of folks who I've known who played in the Ivy League, and it just feels different, but it's still competitive, right? And so, what's it like to be in the Ivy League?
It is competitive. You know, there is a different spin on how you look at the student athlete. It is truly student first. It's a student first model. Everything, the decisions that are made that affects athletics is mostly driven on what effect it's going to have on academics and those types of things. But don't get it twisted. Yeah. Those are some very talented individuals that are playing the various sports. And for me, you know, I use this as an example because it's, while I was at the Ivy League, I had the chance to be on the NCAA Women's Rowing Committee. And I'm a African American male from a small town in Alabama. I can't even swim. And the fact that I was
and rowing is a different sport altogether.
Rowing is a different sport.
How they recruit, everything else is different. Yes,
it is very different. And the fact that I was able to be on the committee, I was actually voted to be chair of the committee. I didn't serve as chair. I ended up leaving to take a job at Tulane, but I was on the rowing committee, got involved with that sport, got to enjoy and appreciate it. We started a Ivy League Women's Rowing Championship while I was there, and to be on the ground floor of that and be a part of that, you know, just the overall experience there, you know, it really taught me some things. It challenged the way I looked at stuff. I actually had to learn to adjust my thinking because that model was so different, but it gave me such a better perspective that I'll use for the rest of my career in college athletics, to be honest with you. I will definitely be able to use that experience and think of some of those things. But, you know, I look at some of the successes, you know, while I was there, and, you know, to use it as an example, I was there to see, you know, Harvard twice and Yale once win a game in the NCAA tournament. And that's right. In a big time setting. They beat some significant teams. And in a couple cases, it wasn't even close. You know, those student athletes, they're very motivated, not only academically but athletically. And I think sometimes you forget how talented they are as athletes, because you hear these unbelievable stories about what they're doing, whether it's in the classroom, in the community. You know, many of them are civic minded with some of the things that they're doing. So it was a great experience. I enjoyed it. And like I said, I will carry up a lot of those experiences with me. I still carry them and think about them to this day.
Well, you know, the fact that we're doing Zoom is a great thing, and the fact that we're working in this environment is something else that we've all been able to transition. But obviously, there was a catastrophic moment that caused us to be in this space. And I always talk about, folks, I'm sitting here watching the NBA basketball because I'm a fan, and you could feel things begin to just change in a matter of 12, 24 hours. And it was clear with leagues like the NBA, where you have a structure for decision-making, a clear structure, things can pivot, happen really quickly.
Yeah.
I was preparing to go watch my niece play hopefully in a tournament game. In NCAA, she plays at Indiana in women's basketball. And so I was getting ready, thinking about what that was going to be about, and all of a sudden it was clear that that might not happen.
Yeah.
When these decision-making, when this was happening, what was the conversation inside the commissioner's office? How were y'all connecting, talking to the NCAA, your membership? What was that like, if you can go back to that moment? It feels like it's a year ago, but, what was it like in you being in your role as someone who's in charge of strategic communication? So whatever we're deciding, how are we then going to be messaging to all the stakeholders and thinking through that? What was that crisis management like for y'all?
Well, you knew the evening of March 11th, we actually had our basketball tournament had taken a little different format this year, and we had two quarterfinal games on both the men's and women's side that were happening that night. So that was Wednesday night, and then the winners of those games would go on to play in the semifinals that was going to happen on Saturday here in New Orleans at the Smoothie King Center.
So I've been to the Smoothie King. Great arena.
It's a great arena. That was going to be the first time that we've done that. So we're going to have this kind of Final Four concept with two men's semis, two women's semis on Saturdays, and then both championship games on Sunday. But as you said, that Wednesday night when everything started kind of unraveling, when I walked into the office on Thursday morning, I kind of got the impression that there was going to be something unique about that day. And then, we ended up at the Sun Belt. We ended up putting out 3 statements that day, all in one day. It went from the first statement was, hey, we're going to have our basketball tournament with limited, attendance, no fans, limited staff, et cetera, et cetera. 90 minutes later, maybe a little bit more than that, we put out a statement saying that the basketball tournament's canceled. One of our teams was on the road driving from their university to New Orleans. And I remember speaking with one of the coaches, and he said, well, what are we supposed to do? I said, well, coach, that was between statement 1 and statement 2. I told him, said, probably need to just pull over to the side of the road for a little bit, because continuing forward toward New Orleans may not be the best move, because that quick time frame to happen. And, I was just trying to share what information I know, because I wasn't necessarily in the conversation. I was just getting what was relayed after the conversations happened. And as the person that was in charge of or leading in putting that messaging out, my job was very simply hear the message, create the message, check the message to make sure it's accurate, and then distribute the message.
That's right.
That was my job for the day. And then so we got those first 2 out, and then there was going to be a conversation later in the day that we had a little bit more time to be prepared for. So I worked again. I tried to work on, hey, what's this third statement going to look like? And the biggest thing was that you need to say something, but you don't need to say too much, because you wanted to have a succinct message. This was not about some long, drawn out messaging point. This was a sentence or 2 or 3, and that's it. That's because you don't know what was coming next. So we got that out, about 4:00, 4:30, I believe it was, on that Thursday, and that was after we did that, after I'm getting emails and phone calls, and people are reaching out to me on Facebook and in various different places, just trying to figure out what we're doing and what we're doing next. And I can tell you when I got to the end of that day, I was tired. I was mentally, and I never lifted anything that day. I didn't do anything physically that day, but sit at a computer. I had to use my brain. I had to use my communication skills. I had to make sure that I was responding and hearing from the commissioner and the senior staff in our office on what was being decided, and do my job. I couldn't worry about the emotion of the day or what I felt. That wasn't even about, I didn't even, at times I almost didn't think about it. I was just trying to process and execute, because that was my job for those moments. When you get in a crisis communications type situation like that, you have to remove yourself from the emotion of it, because that's when all of that training, all of that knowledge, all of that expertise has got to come out. And you got to get it out. You got to get it out quickly, and then hopefully you'll have time, later on to kind of reflect and have your emotions about it. So I was, I can tell you, I was emotionally drained by the end of that day. But you know what? It was about getting the message out. It was about making sure that we communicated what we needed to communicate, because what we were saying was monumental. And I knew that in the moments that we were doing it, but you can't get yourself wrapped up in that. You just have to execute and make sure that you are following up with everybody that's reaching out to you because they got legitimate questions, and making sure that you don't say too much, because it wasn't my place to say anything beyond what we were saying. So people were asking those questions, but yes, I just need to make sure that I stayed on point with exactly what we were putting out, send them that information, make sure as many people had that information as possible, and then wait and see what was going to be next, because you knew something was going to be next after that. So, and then it was that following Monday when we put out our final statement, for lack of a better term, saying that the entire spring and all the activities, all the team related activities were shut down, as well as the entire athletic season. So it was but you know what, here was the biggest thing, and I'll end at this: everybody was dealing with it. This was not just or in the schools in our conference. So that made it a lot different than if it was just us, or it was just your school or just your conference. So that created a lot different perspective on how you're doing it, because we're looking at seeing, at least I was, what was this conference doing? What was this school doing?
Yeah.
And trying to glean some knowledge and frankly information.
How did y'all work across conferences? Like, how did you work? How did you utilize your network across the various conferences? How did other leadership? How did y'all gauge that? I know there's been some calls where they talked about commissioners being on. Did they have all the commissioners on calls across? It was just the Power Five. Was it the Power Five, Group of Five? How were y'all communicating across conferences?
I can't say specifically because I wasn't in the room with the commissioner when he was having those conversations. I can only assume that he was having conversations with all of what you kind of talked about in some form of fashion. For me, it was reaching out to, either what I saw on social media, colleagues, friends that are in the business, that are at other conference offices, because as I mentioned, because I've been at conference office so long, I know pretty much everybody at every other conference. And it wasn't necessarily that we were having conversation. It was even just, hey, what did they post? What did their statement look like? What did they put out on social media? How do we need to do it? They said a lot. They said a little. What's the right place for us? So, it was really just kind of, looking around and just kind of making sure that you could that our message, at least the way I looked at it, and I don't know if this is the right way, I just want to make sure our message fit within what everybody, because I thought because everybody else is dealing with it, it was important that our message it had to be particular to the Sun Belt, no question, but similar so that it fit into the conversation of what was going on.
And that's one of the things, as we talked about it, I mean, one of the challenges college athletics has moving forward is that there's a complicated administrative landscape. College football has a totally separate administrative landscape coming out of the 80s as college football kind of broke away, loosely coupled with the NCAA. College basketball, then you think about the Olympic sports. So how decisions get made across that terrain is complicated. So you have to lead from where you are, right? In some ways, when you have a very complicated landscape of decision making. And so I always want to give people insight to that, because just listening to you having to leverage your network, and even the way communication happens within your organizational structure, in a time of crisis, people are operating, but you just have to find your lane and how you fit is important. So as we move forward and thinking about, okay, what does sports look like in the future? That's also decisions have to be made. You think about the Sun Belt is across several different states. Like you have municipalities you're dealing with. You have governors who have different agendas. How are you gathering intel? How are you working with your membership to figure out, we're hearing now on the football side, folks are, I think Ohio State came out with, they're trying to think about a plan with 35,000 fans in the stadium. you know, with physical distancing. We got people talking about no fans in the stadium for football, but we still got all these other sports. We have issues around folks being able to get additional eligibility if played in the spring. You got governors you're dealing with. Like, you're dealing with a complex landscape. How do y'all work within that, given that, you know, you're the Sun Belt working over multiple states with public and probably private universities? How are you working through that landscape?
No, it's just got to be conversation, because you really hit the nail on the head when it comes to the conference perspective. Every conference is dealing with this because every conference has to deal with multiple states. Using the Sun Belt as an example, you know, what's going to happen in Louisiana is going to be different than what happens in Arkansas. That's different than happening in Georgia or South Carolina. So it's going to be, you know, I think a lot of conferences are trying to figure out, you know, if state A can come back on this date, but state B can only come back on this date, you know, you got to let state A, you know, there's a school of thought that you got to let state A and all the schools within that do that. Some leagues, I believe, that have come out, they've had a universal date they've tried to have across there. And I believe, to the Big Ten example, if I read it correctly, they're letting the schools just kind of decide it. Yeah. You know, so everybody's kind of approaching it differently. And I think the bottom line is there's no one right way and there's no one wrong way, because this thing is so complex, because you just don't know the effect. You know, and you know, in talking with some of my colleagues and friends, you know, I got friends that work at Division I, Division II, Division III conference schools, and everybody is coming at this thing a little differently. You know, so many contingency plans, so many decisions are being made. As you and I both know, some of our friends and colleagues in this business are unfortunately in tough situations with their employment. You know, whether it's a elimination of a job or it's a furlough of a job type situation. So, which affects, even affects how you're going to come back, because if you're down, whatever school you may be, if you're at a school and you're down individuals that kind of help you execute some of those operational things, you don't have as many of those people because you make decisions, then how are you going to do something that's more complicated with less people?
Yes.
You know, so Lord knows I don't have the answer to those questions, but those are the types of things that people are trying to embark upon. And I think that's going to be, it's going to be a work in progress. Like I said, there's no one right answer. I think everybody's literally got to make a decision that works best for their university and their set of universities within their conference. And I think that's what it's going to be. And that's going to create, when you talk about whatever sport it is, obviously everybody's got their focus on college football. That's what's going to make college football challenging, because it's going to be so different. It's going to look so different across the country from conference to conference, state to state.
You know, and this is going to get more into your wheelhouse a little bit more, even more. So we can have fun with this little one, this one right here. So we've been doing this. You know, you always have Throwback Thursday, but it's been Throwback every day. You know, like everybody's been listening to classics, and I've been watching, you know, because I'm paying attention to my niece and what they're doing at Indiana. And they've been creative with kind of how they spotlight with current players, how they've been trying to create and continue to build and engage with the fan base. I know at Wisconsin, they have their jump around at a certain time, and people go out and jump around and try to keep the spirit. You know, people are playing classic games and stuff like that. You know, what has been the throwback moment that y'all have had with the Sun Belt? What are some of the things that y'all have highlighted to really try to engage and interact with the fan base during this time when, you know, they frankly missed their schools. They missed going out to watch and support Georgia State. They missed, you know, being out there and being part of that process. What have y'all done to kind of help to, you know, engage and keep them engaged until they get live sports again?
You know, from a content standpoint, we've done a couple of different things. You know, we've been doing a get to know, like a Q&A series on our website. So a couple times a week, we've gotten various Q&As from various student athletes and featuring those. And I think that's good, because you just frankly get a chance to showcase student athletes, you know, just personalize them a little bit. You know, you send them very basic questions and let them answer it however they want to answer it. If it's a long Short answer. It's about them talking about what they want to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously want to make sure that it's presented right. So that's been one thing that we did. We've done one of my colleagues in the office oversaw doing a baseball kind of all-time team where there was a thing on our there was a content out on our social media that people could log in and put in their votes or put in their nominations, and that got a lot of play out of that. One of the things I'm doing right now, we're doing with softball, we're doing we call it all-time top performers. We're just picking one player from each school, our 10 programs, and just highlighting that student athlete and the accomplishments that she had on the field during her time playing for her Sun Belt team in the Sun Belt. So those are the kind of things that we trying to do. We've been doing some rewinds with ESPN, putting some games up so that people can go back and watch, whether it's a baseball championship game, the championship match from the volleyball tournament, the cross country championship. You know, going back and reusing some of that good content that we have, especially from our conference championships and our football championship game, that people can go back and watch, so people can kind of relive those moments. You know, because everybody's being reflective right now, because that's all we have to do. I mean, you and I both know, the talk of all of COVID, I guess, when it comes to sports content, you know what I'm going to say, The Last Dance. You know, that was the one piece of content that's probably gotten the most conversation, amongst friends on social media. And it was tremendous. You know, everybody's had their opinion on that, but that's been good to be able to do that. And frankly, this time it's been an opportunity to connect with people. You know, I've tried to. This may not have happened if it wasn't for COVID.
That's right.
You know, I do some Zooms on a weekly basis with different groups of friends. I've done it with a couple times with my fraternity brothers that I pledged with at Alabama. You know, just all those. You know, just trying to take this time to and use it as a connection opportunity. And it's been really great, because I think there's some friendships that I have that are pretty strong, that I think are even stronger now, because we have fun, and we try to play games with or a buddy of mine, and we've been doing this Zoom brunch thing where we've been playing some music and inviting people in and having some fun with that, and just kind of branch it out and trying to do some things to been busy with work. Don't get that misconstrued.
But, no. We know they're gonna make you hustle. So
yeah, you got to keep the hustle going on at work. But but it has created some time to do some things that we normally wouldn't do, because I missed going to the Final Four.
Yes.
I missed going to our spring championships in the Sun Belt. We're obviously here. In the next couple of weeks, we would have been going to NACTA and COSIDA and all the affiliate groups that's under the NACTA umbrella, and that would have been in Vegas. So we miss those times, and those times are, for somebody that's been in the business as long as I have. I mean, as much as that is a work function, it's kind of a family reunion.
That's right.
Because you get to see some of these people. That's the one time for the 3, 4, 5 days that you're there that you get to see them. Yeah. And you go to your panels and you do your work stuff, but I have always enjoyed finding somebody in the lobby, finding that corner and sitting over, and we sit down and we have a beverage and we catch up. We talk about work. We talk about the philosophy of work and what we're dealing with, and catch up about their family and their friends and stuff that they're doing, stuff that I'm doing. And I think that's just the family atmosphere of college athletics. And I think, I think it's this time in COVID has definitely reminded me that how important that is.
Well, hey, we see this as the beginning, not the of a conversation relationship with it. We love the fact that you're able to join us. I think in closing, one of the things I think I've learned that, as an administrator and in my work that I've been doing here with RSG, that this time has also given me some insight to possible innovations moving forward. Okay, I would have never, like you're saying, there's certain things we're doing right now that we probably wouldn't have done if it wasn't for. But I think there's some things that we can learn from this that might, ways I'm thinking about programming in my, my role as an administrator that I'm doing virtually. Like, okay, this thing can actually continue to work as a strategy moving forward. Are there things in your space that are things that you've kind of been forced to do, or you're ramping up in ways that you say, okay, even when thing maybe gets back to normal, this is a strategy we want to hold on to? Are there some things that you found during this time that you think could be some long-standing strategies around storytelling or around the way in which people are engaging in content that might be evolving?
I think storytelling, you just hit it. You can figure out a way with just a little bit of knowledge and learn about this. You can create this type of situation and create some real engaging content as far as whether that's a coaches based series and you spend the entire year talking to head coaches and assistant coaches, whether that's student athletes, whether it's a focus on a particular sport, or you can delve a little deeper and maybe you find out, maybe you want to talk to a student athlete on a series that they all have a different life aspiration that they're going, based upon their major. Maybe they've done something. Maybe they, so those types of things. Because the one thing is, you can be where we are here in New Orleans, and you can be talking to a current student athlete, a former student athlete that could be halfway across the world, and you can still have this conversation, and it still be engaging. And you can do it in a live setting. You can do it in a tape setting, and you can kind of do some things as it relates to that. So I think that's going to be a place where you can, you can always do things in the written form, but I think we can use some of these tools that we have to engage our conversation, whether it's in this Zoom type concept or in more of the blog podcast type concept. I think those are types of things. Now with I haven't gone down the road on a couple of these, but you start learning about TikTok and what people are doing there, Twitch and what's going on there. I just signed up just to have, I'm not going to be one putting up a bunch of videos, but I felt like I was like, man, I gotta at least go in and sign up so I can kind of figure out and learn. And I haven't done as much as I wanted to, but you talk about innovate. Like I want to learn Adobe Spark, and I haven't done that. Maybe I need to learn a couple tricks on Photoshop that I don't know. I'm not the world's greatest Photoshop, but finding some things like that, not only so maybe I can help deliver some messages that we do better. That's a skill that I can gain that will help me, but then it's going to help me as a communications person as far as the things that we deliver. So, those are some things that I want to make sure to do, and I will do. And I think I'd close with, I talk a lot about networking and having your network of people. That's a real powerful thing in the group. And I think relying on them more for knowledge, because they got knowledge and perspective. Sometimes when you're putting a content idea together, maybe run it past one of your friends that maybe did something different or something similar. And maybe they might give you that twist, or they say, well, we went down this path and it didn't quite work for us. It might work for you. Or we learned this, so you might want to pivot just a little bit. And maybe that saves you a little time. Maybe that makes the process in which you create that content more efficient, and you get it done a lot faster than you would normally. And you have a better product, better end product, which is obviously what you want. You want the best end product that you possibly have, because you're trying to promote your school, your conference, the student athletes, the coaches, the administrators, and at whatever level that you're trying to do it. And I think that's really important.
Well, Scottie, we want to thank you for being here with us. It was a pleasure. We want to wish you well again and stay safe. As we try to figure out what's going on here, we find a vaccine, a solution, but, stay safe, and I hope everyone's out there. And we just wish you well. We look forward to future conversations with you here on RSG, and, good luck with everything.
Well, thanks for having me in the lounge. This was really great. I enjoy doing things like this and sharing my wisdom and knowledge to folks, and just having a great conversation. So you stay safe as well. I hope all is well with you and yours, and everybody up there at Wisconsin. That's a great school, great people. I know you enjoy your time up there, and I can only wish you all the best as you keep going forward.
All right, this is RSG Live at the Lounge. You can catch all our content at realsportsguys.com. You get on all our social media platforms from there, our podcast, our video, our audio. Engage us. We love to hear from folks. And also vote. We have our top teams. We have a tournament, a virtual a tournament that we've set up at the Saint. It's called St. Cecilia's in Detroit. We drafted from the all-time great and current players. We have teams listed up there, and you can vote on which team you think will win at the Saint. It's a classic gym. You know, Jalen Rose, Magic Johnson, all the George Gervin, they all played at the Saint. Hey, even our own lounge, Alex Polakowski took a team down there back in the early 80s to compete at the Saint. I think my team's going to win. So check it out. It's called Black and Yellow. Vote for us there on our lounge page. Until then, next time, this is D. Wills, RSG at the Lounge. We're out.